Welcome back, my friends. Today, we are going somewhere the history books barely touch. The most powerful country in the world spent 60 years trying to destroy an island smaller than the state of Pennsylvania. 665 assassination attempts, a CIA invasion that collapsed in 3 days, an economic blockade that is still running today. And through all of it, every plot, every sanction, every operation with a code name, the island refused to go down. This is Cuba, and this is the story of how a tiny island stood face to face with the greatest superpower on Earth and never blinked. Picture an island so beautiful it stopped explorers in their tracks. Warm turquoise water on every side, thick green forests stretching across rolling hills, soil so rich it grew sugarcane like nowhere else on Earth, coffee so good it traveled across oceans, cigars so perfect they became famous in every city in the world, in a position on the map so strategically important, sitting at the entrance of the Gulf of Mexico, 90 miles from the coast of Florida, that every empire that ever looked at it had the same thought: we need to control that. Christopher Columbus arrived in 1492 and wrote in his journal that Cuba was the most beautiful land human eyes had ever seen. Within weeks, Spain had claimed it. Within years, Spain had colonized it. And for the next 400 years, 4 centuries, Cuba belonged to the Spanish crown. The Spanish took the sugarcane fields, the coffee plantations, and the tobacco farms. They took the labor of enslaved African people, brought in chains to work the land. They took the profits and sent them back to Madrid. Cuba produced the wealth. Spain collected it. The people of Cuba, generation after generation, watched their island's richness flow outward to a country most of them had never seen. 400 years is a long time to be patient. By the 1800s, Cuba was exhausted, and a revolutionary fire was beginning to burn across the island that no Spanish governor could fully put out. But before Cuba could free itself from Spain, a much more complicated relationship was about to begin. America was watching. The United States in the late 1800s was growing fast and looking outward, and 90 miles off the coast of Florida sat the richest island in the Caribbean, still under Spanish control. That made Washington deeply uncomfortable. A foreign empire that close to American shores, sitting on top of that much wealth and that many strategic ports? So America did what America has done many times throughout history. It picked a side, it armed that side, and it made promises it never intended to keep. American weapons and money flowed into Cuban revolutionary movements. American politicians made speeches about Cuba's right to freedom. And in 1898, the United States formalized its position in something called the Teller Amendment, a public declaration that America had no intention of annexing Cuba or controlling it after Spain was removed. Cuba is for Cubans, the message said. The Cuban people believed it. They fought, they bled, they drove Spain out after centuries of occupation. And when the dust finally settled, when the Spanish ships disappeared over the horizon for the last time, the Cuban people looked up, ready to claim the independence they had sacrificed everything for. What they got instead was the Platt Amendment of 1901, written not by Cubans, but by Americans. This single document gave the United States the right to intervene in Cuba's internal politics whenever it decided necessary. It forced Cuba to lease land to America for a naval base, a base at a place called Guantanamo Bay, and it tied the newly independent Cuban government to American approval on foreign policy, on debt, and on trade. Cuba had traded one colonial master for another, except this one smiled, spoke about freedom, and called it friendship. The Platt Amendment's ghost still haunts Cuba today. That naval base at Guantanamo Bay, which Cuba never agreed to, which Cuba has demanded back for decades, is still fully operational, still American, right now. In 1902, Cuba became officially independent. The first president was chosen, and for the next 5 decades, a parade of Cuban leaders came and went, most of them quietly doing exactly what Washington wanted, because Washington was 90 miles away and had already shown exactly what it was capable of. Until 1933, when a man named Batista arrived, and everything went darker.
Fulgencio Batista didn't just cooperate with America, he handed Cuba over completely. American corporations arrived and bought up sugar mills, coffee farms, and tobacco plantations. American businessmen took over the tourist industry. Havana, Cuba's beautiful capital city, was transformed into something that made ordinary Cubans sick to look at. Gambling dens ran openly. The city became famous across the world for vice, not for its culture, not for its history, not for its people, but for what wealthy Americans could do there that they couldn't do at home. The profits left on American boats. The Cuban people watched their island, the most beautiful land Columbus had ever seen, turned into an entertainment complex for foreign tourists. Unemployment spread, poverty deepened, and the rage that had been building since the Spanish colonial era, the same rage that had driven revolution once before, began building again, quietly in the countryside, in the mountains, among young men and women who had read enough history to know exactly what was happening to them. One of those young men was a lawyer from a wealthy family who had spent years watching his country be dismantled piece by piece. His name was Fidel Castro, and what he was about to do would trigger one of the most extraordinary standoffs in the history of the modern world. On January 1st, 1959, Batista fled Cuba in the middle of the night. Castro's forces, guerrilla fighters who had been waging war from the mountains for years, rolled into Havana to a reception that felt like liberation. Crowds flooded the streets. After decades of American-backed corruption, after watching their resources extracted and their dignity ignored, the Cuban people had a government that said it would finally put Cuba first. What Castro did next made Washington's blood run cold. Within days, American banks in Cuba closed. American factories nationalized. American sugar mills returned to Cuban hands. Every piece of property that American corporations had accumulated over decades of Batista-era deals was handed back to the Cuban state overnight. American companies lost hundreds of millions of dollars in a single week. President Eisenhower, sitting in Washington, watching one of America's most profitable Caribbean assets simply walk away, made a decision that would define U.S. foreign policy for the next 6 decades. Fidel Castro had to go. What followed was not diplomacy. It was not negotiation. It was not economic pressure alone. It was something far more personal, far more relentless, and far more bizarre than anything a small island nation should ever have to survive. The CIA opened a file on Castro that would eventually run to thousands of pages. They recruited his enemies, trained militias, funded underground networks, and began planning an operation that would, in their confident assessment, remove Castro from power within months. They had no idea what they were dealing with. The CIA's first plan was simple: train Cuban exiles, arm them, send them back in, and let them topple Castro from the inside. Washington called it Brigade 2506. 1,500 men trained on American soil, equipped with American weapons, given American intelligence. On April 17, 1961, they landed at a place called the Bay of Pigs. Local fishermen spotted them within hours. Castro's forces were waiting. Within 3 days, over 100 invaders were dead and nearly 1,400 were captured. Castro paraded them in front of the world's press. The CIA's fingerprints were on everything: the weapons, the training manuals, the aircraft painted with fake Cuban markings that American pilots had been flying. President Kennedy watched one of the most embarrassing intelligence failures in American history play out on the front pages of every newspaper on Earth. He didn't stop, he escalated. The next operation had a name that told you everything about the mindset behind it: Operation Mongoose, and it had one goal: destroy Fidel Castro by any means available. What followed was not strategy, it was obsession. The CIA tried to kill Castro 650 times. That number is not an exaggeration, it is a Guinness World Record. The most assassination attempts ever made against a single individual by an intelligence agency. And the methods were so creative, so desperate, so increasingly unhinged that they read today like dark comedy, except none of it was funny to the people of Cuba who lived through it. Castro smoked cigars. The CIA sent him exploding cigars. He survived. They sent cigars laced with poison. He survived. They contaminated his food. They poisoned his coffee. They put toxins in his scuba diving wetsuit. Castro loved to swim. He survived. They hired his barber to poison his razor. He survived. They placed a bomb inside a television camera at a press conference. He survived. They sent women trained to seduce him and slip poison into his drink. He survived every single one. 650 attempts, 50 years of trying. America, the most powerful nation on Earth, could not kill one man on a small island 90 miles from its coast. But in trying, they created something they never anticipated. They made him untouchable. Every failed assassination, every exposed CIA plot, every captured invasion force made Castro more popular with the Cuban people, not less. Every time America tried to destroy him, it reminded Cubans exactly why they had revolted in the first place. And it pushed Cuba deeper into the arms of the one country America feared most. The Soviet Union had been watching Cuba with great interest. Nikita Khrushchev, the Soviet leader, saw in Cuba something invaluable: a Soviet ally 90 miles from American soil, a permanent thorn in Washington's side, and a perfect location for something that would change the entire balance of the Cold War overnight: nuclear missiles. America had already placed Jupiter nuclear missiles in Turkey, 150 kilometers from the Soviet border. Khrushchev looked at that map and made a decision that was, in its own brutal logic, completely rational. If you can put missiles next to my border, I can put missiles next to yours. In 1962, Soviet ships quietly delivered nuclear warheads to Cuba. They were assembled in secret, aimed at American cities, capable of striking Washington, New York, Miami, any target on American soil within minutes of launch. On October 15, 1962, an American U-2 spy plane photographed the missile sites. Kennedy saw the photographs. His face went white. America responded with a full naval blockade of Cuba, a wall of warships surrounding the island, turning back any Soviet vessel that approached. The world held its breath. Soviet ships were already en route. If they crossed the blockade line, the next sound would be the opening shots of World War III. For 13 days in October 1962, the world teetered on the absolute edge of nuclear war. But the moment the world came closest to ending was not in the White House. It was not in the Kremlin. It was in a Soviet submarine, underwater, in total darkness, with no communication with Moscow, and a nuclear torpedo already armed. The submarine was called B-59. It was deep underwater, running silent beneath the American naval blockade, when American destroyers above began dropping depth charges, underwater explosives designed to force submarines to the surface. The explosions rocked the hull. Equipment failed. The heat inside the submarine climbed past 50 degrees. Men were fainting, and all communication with Moscow had been lost. The standing orders were clear. If contact with Moscow is lost, assume war has begun. Launch the nuclear torpedo immediately. The submarine's captain gave the order to arm the weapon. 2 of the 3 officers required to authorize a nuclear launch agreed. The third man said no. His name was Vasily Arkhipov, second in command of the B-59. He looked at the chaos around him, the heat, the fear, the darkness, the silence from Moscow, and he made the argument that this could be a routine exercise, that they should surface and verify before firing a nuclear weapon at an American fleet. The captain argued. Arkhipov held firm. One man, in a submarine,
Sweating in 50-degree heat, no communication with the outside world, his captain ordering him to agree to launch a nuclear torpedo, and he said no. The B-59 surfaced. American ships surrounded it. Tense radio contact was established. Within hours, Kennedy and Khrushchev were negotiating. Within days, a deal was reached. Soviet missiles out of Cuba, American missiles out of Turkey. The blockade lifted. The ships turned back. The world exhaled. Vasily Arkhipov went home. He received no medal. He was given no parade. For decades, almost nobody knew his name. It was only years later, when the submarine's declassified logs became public, that the world learned how close it had come and who had stopped it. One officer, in the dark, underwater, who simply refused to end the world. The missile crisis ended. Kennedy was assassinated in Dallas in November 1963, a killing whose full truth has never been publicly established. Khrushchev was removed from power in 1964, partly blamed for backing down over Cuba. The Cold War continued, and Fidel Castro kept governing Cuba. 1 year passed, then 10, then 20. American presidents came and went. Eisenhower, Kennedy, Johnson, Nixon, Ford, Carter, Reagan, Bush, Clinton, Bush again, and Obama. And Castro was still there. 11 different men sat in the White House during Castro's 50 years in power. Each one tried in their own way to remove him. Economic sanctions, diplomatic isolation, CIA operations, travel bans, trade embargoes that cut Cuba off from global markets and slowly starved its economy. None of it worked. When Castro finally stepped down in 2008, not because America forced him out, but because old age was slowing his body, he handed power to his brother, Raul. The Castro family had governed Cuba for half a century. America had spent those same 50 years trying to stop them. The island won. Cuba today is exhausted in ways that go beyond politics. The Soviet Union collapsed in 1991, taking with it the economic lifeline that had kept Cuba breathing through decades of American sanctions. Venezuela, which had been supplying Cuba with affordable oil for years, fell into its own crisis after American pressure destabilized its government. Cuba's fuel supply dried up almost overnight. Power grids failed across the island. Hospitals went dark. Schools closed. Ordinary Cubans stood in lines for food, for medicine, for basic dignity. Things that the richest country in the world, 90 miles away, was deliberately making impossible to obtain. The blockade that America built 6 decades ago never came down. Not after Kennedy, not after the Cold War ended, not after the Soviet Union disappeared. Every country that trades with Cuba risks American sanctions. Every ship that docks in Havana risks being locked out of American ports. The wall is invisible, but it is total. Then, Russia sent an oil tanker. It sailed across the Atlantic under the eyes of American warships, carrying the fuel Cuba desperately needed, and the world watched to see what America would do. Stop it and risk a direct confrontation with Moscow? Allow it and appear weak? America let it through. The fuel arrived. The lights came back on in some parts of Havana. Hospitals restarted their machines. For the first time in months, Cuba exhaled. But nobody is celebrating, not yet, because the question hanging over that tanker's arrival is the same question that has hung over Cuba for 60 years. Was this American restraint, or was it strategy? Did Washington allow the fuel through because it chose peace, or because it is already planning something quieter, something slower, something with a new code name that nobody has leaked yet? Cuba has been here before. The relief arrives, the pressure shifts, and then, just when the island begins to breathe again, the next move comes. That is the pattern. 60 years of it. The fuel is there. The lights are on tonight. But in Havana, nobody sleeps too deeply. The island is still standing, waiting, as they have always waited, for the morning.